On Yom Kippur, we ask God for forgiveness for mistakes that we've made. And one of the things that we mentioned is Al Chet Shechatanu Lefanecha Be'ones Uviratzon. We ask God for forgiveness for sins that we committed before you. Be'ones Uviratzon. Now, Ratzon means with desire, with choice. We wanted it. We chose it. Be'ones means it was completely against your will. We have a principle that ones rachamana patre. God does not punish people for sins that happen against your will. If somebody picks you up and forces you to sin, it wasn't really you. They stick non-kosher food down your throat. That's not your fault. And you won't be punished for such behavior. So why do we ask for forgiveness for sins that were done be'ones uveratzon? If it was done be'ones, why do we need forgiveness from God? There's a very interesting story in the Talmud which says the following. It says that Rabbi Akiva, there was one area of study that brought him, to tremendous emotion. What happened? They were studying the following sort of arcane seeming laws, that a woman who makes certain religious commitments called nedarim, if she makes a neder not to do something that would tremendously influence her husband, called dvarim sheveino levena, something that would tremendously influence her husband, then he has the right to, within the day that he hears about it, nullify that oath. So if a woman were to say, I won't have any intimate contact with my husband or something like this, he has the right to either accept or deny her right to make that oath. So the Gemara says, what would happen if it says Isha hafera v'Hashem yislach la. It says her husband can deny her vow, and Hashem will forgive her. So the question is, what does she need forgiveness for? So our sages taught the following. This is talking about a woman who made a commitment to become a Nazir. She decided she's not going to eat grapes, she's not going to drink wine, and other things. And then her husband heard about it and was Mayfair the neder, so it's no longer incumbent upon her to keep that. But she doesn't know. So she thinks she's a Nazira. She thinks she's not allowed to have grapes and wine, and then she goes and drinks anyway. She has some wine. Right? It happens. You know you're not supposed to do something, you break the diet. So she breaks this, and now what? So she didn't really do anything wrong, because she wasn't obligated to be a Nazira, since her husband nullified the vow. And yet, the Torah is saying Hashem will forgive her. And we learn from there that niskavein le'echol besar chazir, the Allah biyado basar tle. If a person was attempting to eat ham, and accidentally he picked up some kosher meat, some goat's meat, and he ate that, that he still needs to do tshuva. And Rabbi Akiva would cry and say, if when a person does the right thing, but they were planning to do the wrong thing, that itself obligates them to correct something, then how much more so must a person find forgiveness when they tried to do the wrong thing and succeeded at doing the wrong thing? That meant a lot to Rabbi Akiva. What Rabbi Akiva was highlighting is that there are two parts to every sin. One part of a sin is the fact that you have done something damaging to yourself. If by accident you stick your finger in a socket, it will have the same influence as if you did it on purpose. And being that spirituality is authentic and real, it will have an impact even if it's done against your will. So that if somebody who is a small child, an infant, is fed non-kosher food, it will have an influence on that child in the same way that it might if an adult made that choice. And therefore we're told that we should be very careful what we feed our children. And it says that if a person is eating non-kosher food, we shouldn't allow that woman to breastfeed a Jewish baby, because eating non-kosher food itself is a reality. Spirituality is real. A second thing is that whenever a person sins, they violate the will of God. There's God, and He created you, and He asked you to live a certain way. He instructed you to do something. And by not doing that, you change your relationship with God in some way. That's a second part of every single sin. You could theoretically have either one. In our situation, you have a woman who didn't actually do anything wrong, but she violated God's will in her behavior because she thought that she was doing something against God's will and was prepared to do so. You can also have another person who does something ba'ones, who something happens against his will without any control. But even that has an influence on a person. And we say, Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, we ask God for forgiveness for any choices, any sins we might have made, whether ba'ones, even if they happened against our will. We'd like Him to help cleanse us from the influences that might have had on us, and beratzon, and things that were done with will. Now, as to the question, the Sfas Emes speaks about why one might deserve that. It's a philosophical question, really, and he says apparently if a person was supposed to have something happen to him be'ones, then there's something he needs to fix up. But I think that question is very much a question that you would always have. If, God forbid, somebody was abused as a child or in some other way hurt completely against their will, while there's a philosophical question of why God ordained that person should come into life and deal with that challenge, practically, if we were to say, since it's not their fault, we refuse to give that person any therapy because they didn't do anything wrong. What a terrible mistake. Therapy isn't because you did something wrong. It can be. But even if you didn't do anything wrong, there still may be a need for tremendous help and rehabilitation and growth. Slicha, forgiveness from God, is therapy. It's rehabilitation. It's helping us get back to where we need to be. We're not admitting guilt only, for even a person who isn't guilty could need slicha. Certainly, if we acted in a way that denied our relationship with God, that didn't treat it with the proper respect, then that's something that needs to be fixed. But this is not so much about acknowledging guilt and wallowing in guilt, as it is about recreating the magnificent and beautiful connection that we know we ought to have to the Torah and the mitzvos. And therefore, one of the most beautiful things we say is even sins that we did be'ones require tshuva just as much as sins of commission that were done deliberately. Because even if it was done be'ones, even if it was done completely against our will, we're still so eager to rebuild and reconnect and refine ourselves in the appropriate way so that we can really have the thrilling, magnificent, and deep relationship that we so desire with the truth and with Hashem and with ourselves.